Even if he wants to cheat, she said, holding a half-empty wine glass, no one would sleep with him. Laughter. The kind that punches you in the ribs without touching you. I wasn't in the room when she said it. I was down the hallway, by the guest bathroom. But I heard it. I heard her. The pause that followed was worse than the sentence. No one defended me. No one chuckled awkwardly. It was pure amusement, shared and accepted. So I stood there, staring at the bathroom mirror, hand still on the doorknob, face still damp from splashing water a minute earlier. I didn't go back to the party. Instead, I quietly grabbed my jacket, walked through the backyard, and left. No dramatic exit. No slammed door. Just a man, her husband, walking into the October night, with 4 words echoing in his skull. She didn't even text me until the next morning. Where'd you run off to? You embarrassed me. Not, are you okay? Not, I'm sorry. I embarrassed her. That night, I slept in my car outside the Planet Fitness lot 3 blocks from our place. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there, wide awake, realizing that she didn't just stop loving me. She started mocking me. Publicly. But here's the twist. I never told her I heard what she said. I acted normal. Coffee. Made it for her the next morning. Trash. Took it out. Small talk. Nailed it. But something inside me shifted. It was quiet. No fire. No explosion. Just a door silently closing. And when Marlowe, the HR guy with that awful cologne and fake laugh, messaged me something strange 3 days later, everything began to unravel in ways she never expected. I didn't plan revenge, but I did say one thing, one calm sentence, that made her knees buckle like I'd pulled the floor out from under her. That sentence. You'll get there. But just know this, she begged. She still doesn't know I heard her. That's the part that gnaws at her now, even more than the fallout. The fact that I never brought it up. Never argued. Never sulked. I just adjusted. The day after the party, she was scrolling through her phone in the kitchen while sipping black coffee like nothing had happened. She told me her boss complimented her speech, asked if I could run to the store later, reminded me the gutters still needed cleaning before the rain. I nodded, said sure, smiled even, but I had already started digging. Not out of revenge. That would suggest I had power in the situation. I didn't. Not then. I was reacting the only way I knew how, quietly, insecurely, the way someone does when they're used to being ignored and laughed at. That's when I checked her old iPad. The one she forgot was still synced to her cloud account. The same iPad she left in the bottom drawer of the nightstand because it's too slow to be useful. Apparently, not too slow for secrets. Messages. Hundreds. Between her and Kay, her best friend. Well, the person she thought was her best friend. I'm sure she never imagined I'd read them. But I did. And read it, the things she wrote. He's not even a man, Kay. I look at him and feel nothing. Like a warm couch I'm too polite to throw away. He tried to initiate last month. It was sad. Like watching a golden retriever hump a pillow. Sometimes I fantasize about cheating just to feel human again. But who would even bother competing for Lyle? I scrolled and scrolled until my hands were shaking too much to hold the damn tablet. I didn't even get angry. I felt hollow, like someone flipped my body inside out and forgot to zip me back up. The betrayal wasn't physical. It wasn't even romantic. It was the casual cruelty. The way she dissected me like I was an insect under glass, emotionless, methodical, smug. I charged the iPad, wiped my fingerprints off it, and put it right back where I found it. Still haven't told her I ever touched it. 2 days later, she asked me if I'd fixed the garbage disposal. I told her, of course, later today. But instead, I created a new email address. I set up an anonymous Dropbox. I started making copies of everything. Messages, screenshots, voicemails, even her petty posts on forums where she vented about her clueless husband. Every smile I gave her after that was fake. Every nod, every good night, every quiet dinner, a stage performance. She didn't know I was studying her. And still she kept slipping. The sentence that made her beg was coming. But before that moment arrived, there was one more discovery that turned everything upside down. Let's just say it involved a man named Jace, a conference trip she forgot to mention, and a photo that should never have landed in our shared cloud album. The second I saw it, I knew exactly what I'd say. She doesn't even know the photo exists in my mind. I never brought it up, never confronted her. And that makes it worse, for her. It was buried in a synced album we hadn't used in years. The kind of forgotten space in the cloud where random screenshots and boomerang videos from 2019 live like digital ghosts. I found it by accident, really. I was transferring some files from our shared drive when I saw a folder called Vegas Strategy Offsite. I opened it. 12 photos. 11 were the usual: drinks, neon lights, someone doing a karaoke version of Take On Me. But the 12th? That one was different. It was blurry, not posed. Taken in a hotel hallway, maybe outside an elevator. Her hand was on some guy's chest, a man I didn't recognize, while his lips were pressed to her neck. Her eyes were closed. The kind of photo people think they deleted. But phones are sloppy. Sync is automatic. I stared at that image for hours. Not in anger. Just silence. A dull, full-body stillness. My wife, who mocked me as unlovable, who reduced me to a joke in front of her coworkers, was out in Vegas letting strangers explore her throat like it owed them rent. Still, I didn't say anything. You might think I'm weak. I get it. But silence is power when used right. And I wasn't done collecting. I copied the photo, hid it, backed it up 6 times in 6 places, encrypted it with a password even I can barely remember. Not because I wanted revenge, but because I knew I'd need proof one day. Because women like Melora don't crumble from confrontations. They unravel under evidence. Later that week, she came home early, humming some tune under her breath, dumped her heels in the hallway, and asked if I'd seen her black cardigan. I said I hadn't. I was staring at the TV, which I hadn't turned on. She didn't even notice. That was the moment I realized she no longer saw me as a person. I was just there, a background prop in the theater of her perfect, polished, PR-curated life. But she would. She'd notice soon. Because I was done playing the pathetic husband with the blank stare and broken spine. So I began to change the story. At first it was little things. I started locking my phone. I started going out without telling her where. I cut the lawn without being asked, but didn't trim the edges, just enough to make her comment. I stopped answering her immediately, delayed my responses, let the silence stretch awkwardly across dinner. Then came the night I didn't come home. Just once. I stayed in a cheap motel 2 towns over, turned my phone off, and slept better than I had in months. When I returned the next morning, she was in her robe at the kitchen table, staring at a mug she hadn't touched. She didn't ask where I'd been, just glanced at me and said, "You're acting weird." I just smiled and said, "Am I?" And that was it. No explanation, no apology, no fear. She didn't know it yet, but I had flipped the switch. And soon, she'd realize she was no longer the one who held the power. The first time I actually let words slip, the kind that mattered, was at a dinner we hosted 2 weeks after the party. Melora had planned it meticulously: candles, overpriced wine, a cheese board with labels I couldn't even pronounce. She had invited 4 of her co-workers, including Mason. Yes, the same Mason who laughed the loudest at my humiliation. They were all gathered around the table, drinking, laughing, trading stories about office gossip and promotions. I kept quiet, pushing my food around the plate, playing the harmless role she expected me to play. Then Mason made some crack about his gym routine, flexing his arm like he was in a mirror. Melora smirked, looked directly at me, and said, "See? That's what a man looks like." The table erupted in laughter, everyone clinking glasses like it was just friendly banter. My ears burned, but I didn't show it. I just stared at my wine for a long moment. And then, in the calmest, most detached voice I've ever managed, I said one sentence. "I know what happened in Vegas." The table went silent so fast, it was like someone cut the sound out of the room. Mason coughed into his napkin. One of the women looked down awkwardly. And Melora? She froze. Her fork hovered midair, her smile dying before it fully reached her face. She didn't laugh. She didn't roll her eyes. She just sat there, her cheeks draining of color, her lips parting slightly like she was about to choke. I didn't elaborate, didn't raise my voice, didn't even look at her directly. I just went back to cutting my food like I'd commented on the weather. The rest of dinner was uncomfortable, conversations breaking down into forced small talk. No one wanted to be in that room anymore. Her coworkers left earlier than expected, mumbling excuses about early mornings. When the door closed behind the last one, Melora turned to me, her eyes wide and frantic. "What do you mean by that?" she asked, her voice trembling just slightly, like she already knew. I shrugged and said, "Exactly what you think it means." And then I went upstairs without another word. That night, she didn't come to bed. I could hear her pacing in the living room, opening drawers, pulling at her phone, maybe trying to figure out what I had, what I knew, how much she had already lost without realizing it. I lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, a strange calm flooding through me. For once, I wasn't the one begging for scraps of her attention. And that's when it hit me. Her sentence at that party had been her mistake. Mine was just beginning. The silence between us over the next 2 days was louder than any argument we had ever had. Not a single confrontation, not a single accusation. Melora didn't scream. I didn't accuse. But the house felt like it was cracking apart plank by plank under the weight of the unspoken. She walked slower, moved more deliberately, kept glancing at me as if I were a sleeping dog she wasn't sure was truly asleep. She cooked dinner the next night. She hadn't cooked in over a year, and placed my plate down gently, saying, "You hungry?" with the forced cheer of a hostage trying to negotiate her own release. I said, "Sure," and took a bite. I never told her what I knew. Not the hotel photo. Not the messages. Not the smug way she had mocked me to her friend. I let her imagination fill in the gaps. And Melora, for all her arrogance, had a vivid imagination when she was scared. That Friday evening, I came home to find her sitting on the floor of the bedroom, our old photo albums spread out in front of her like some sad museum of a marriage she was trying to resurrect. I watched her flip a page. Her fingers trembled just a little. When she heard me behind her, she looked up and said, "Do you remember this trip? The cabin? You made pancakes and burned them?" I nodded. "I remember." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. That was a good time. She wanted me to say more. She wanted warmth, a bridge, a hint that she could still reach me. I just took off my jacket, walked into the bathroom, and closed the door. And behind that door, I grinned, not out of cruelty, but out of the bizarre satisfaction that came from finally being the one in control of the silence. The next morning, she was already awake when I came down for coffee. She had makeup on, hair done, wearing that soft blue sweater I used to love before I stopped noticing. "I thought we could do something today," she said, voice light, like nothing was wrong. "Maybe brunch? That place on Fairmont?" I didn't respond right away. I just sipped my coffee and said, "Is Jace coming too?" Her face collapsed. The blood drained so fast I thought she might pass out. She sat down hard. "Lyle, it wasn't like that." Now she was saying my name again. Funny, she hadn't used it in weeks. I didn't. I mean, it was just flirting. I swear, nothing happened. I tilted my head. "You sure? You look pretty relaxed in that photo." She blinked. Hard. "What photo?" I didn't answer. That was the moment. That was when it began. She reached for my hand across the table and whispered, "Please, don't do this. Don't shut me out." But I pulled away gently, stood up, and walked out of the kitchen. Her begging didn't start with tears. No, it started with that tiny moment of panic. The realization that the floor beneath her had shifted and she didn't know where the cracks were yet. And I was just getting started. By Sunday, she had stopped pretending everything was fine. I came downstairs late in the morning, expecting her to be scrolling on her phone or heading out for errands. But instead she was sitting at the kitchen table, both hands wrapped tightly around a coffee mug like it was the only thing keeping her from floating away. Her eyes were red, swollen in that way you can't cover up with concealer. She had been crying before I woke up. That alone was unusual. Melora wasn't the type to cry over anything. Not traffic, not funerals, not me. When she saw me, her lips parted as if she had rehearsed this moment a dozen times already. "Lyle," she whispered, almost too soft to hear. "Please, can we talk?" I sat down across from her without saying a word. She searched my face like she was hoping to find some clue, some crack in my armor that would tell her what I knew, what I'd seen, how deep the hole she'd dug actually went. I kept my expression blank. Just sipping the cup of coffee I poured myself, forcing her to carry the weight of the silence. Finally, she broke. "I made mistakes," she said, her voice trembling. "Things I shouldn't have said, things I shouldn't have done. But I don't want to lose you. You don't understand, that party, what I said, it wasn't true. It was stupid. I was trying to sound funny, and I humiliated you. I know I did. And I'm sorry." She stopped to catch her breath, wiping quickly at her eyes like she hated letting me see her vulnerable. Then she leaned forward, desperation spilling out like a dam cracking open. "You have to believe me. It didn't mean anything with Jace. I swear to God, it wasn't what it looked like." I just raised my eyebrows and took another sip. No accusations, no questions, just letting her drown in her own panic. Her hands tightened on the mug until I thought it might shatter. Please, she said again, this time louder, like begging me was physically painful. Don't talk about divorce. Don't throw this away. We can fix it. I'll do whatever it takes. Just tell me what you want. Tell me what I need to do. Her voice cracked on the last word, and it was the first time in our entire marriage I had ever heard that sound from her. I stood up slowly, rinsed out my mug, and set it in the sink. Then, without looking at her, I said in a calm, steady tone, I don't want anything right now. And I walked out of the room, leaving her alone at the table. Behind me, I heard the quiet sound of her sobbing into her hands. For once, it wasn't me crying in secret. And I can't lie, that sound stayed with me all day. Not because it made me pity her, but because it was the first time I realized just how much power I suddenly had. And that power was only growing. By midweek, the begging had transformed into something else entirely. Melora started acting like a person who had misplaced her own reflection, paranoid, jumpy, unsure who she was even talking to anymore. She'd ask innocent questions in the morning. Do you want eggs or cereal? But her eyes would study me like I was a bomb with no visible timer. Every word I didn't say only made her more frantic. She was unraveling, and the best part? I hadn't actually done anything. I hadn't mentioned the photo again. I hadn't confronted her about the messages to Kay. I hadn't spoken Jace's name since that single icy moment at the table. And still, the silence was splitting her down the middle. On Thursday night, she stormed into my home office, a room she hadn't entered in months, holding her phone up like a weapon. Who is this? She snapped, shoving the screen toward me. It was a number she didn't recognize. A contact saved only as C. I blinked at it. No idea, I replied flatly. You think I'm cheating? She scoffed, turned away, then back again like she wanted to both scream and cry at the same time. I don't know what to think anymore, Lyle. You're so calm. You're never this calm. It's like you're, I don't know, planning something. I stood up, slowly, and took the phone from her hand. Looked at it again. Isn't that what you used to say I wasn't capable of? She froze. That night, she didn't sleep. I could hear her pacing the hallway. She opened drawers. She rifled through the filing cabinet in the basement. I watched through the camera I'd installed in the corner of my office weeks ago. She was digging for anything, old emails, notes, maybe trying to see if I had hired a lawyer already. She was right to be scared. I hadn't hired one yet, but I had been researching. Quietly, thoroughly. And the more she cracked, the more leverage I gained. The next morning, she tried a new tactic, sweetness. She wore a dress I hadn't seen in a long time, soft green, with the buttons up the side. She cooked breakfast, French toast, my favorite. She sat across from me and forced a soft smile. Lyle, she said gently, I know I hurt you. I know I broke things, but I still love you. I know I'm not good at showing it, but I want to fix us. I'll do counseling. I'll change my schedule. I'll delete every male contact in my phone. Just tell me what to do. I watched her carefully, trying to see if she even believed herself. But all I said was, why now? She blinked. Because I'm scared I've already lost you. That was the first honest sentence she'd said in weeks. I nodded slowly, wiped my mouth with a napkin, and said, good. I left the plate half-eaten and walked out the door for work. She stood there in the kitchen, holding the edge of the table like it might anchor her to the ground. Her lip trembled. Her eyes didn't follow me, because she finally realized the begging wasn't working. And the man she thought no one would ever want had become the one thing she couldn't afford to lose. The house was quiet the morning I left. Not heavy quiet, not the kind that feels like something's wrong. It was the kind of silence that comes when you know a decision is final and no part of you wants to fight it anymore. I had packed the night before, methodically, without rush or drama. Just the essentials. I didn't need to take everything. Most of the memories tied to those things didn't belong to me anymore anyway. Melora sat on the edge of the bed, her robe cinched too tightly at the waist like she was trying to hold herself together with fabric. Her eyes were puffy, but dry. She didn't beg this time. She just watched me zip my duffel bag with the numb acceptance of someone who knew they had finally pushed too far. I never thought you'd actually go, she said softly, her voice nearly breaking. I stood in the doorway of our bedroom. No, her bedroom now, and looked at her for the last time not with anger, but with something even stronger, indifference. You told everyone no one would want me, I said. But you forgot to ask what happens when I stop wanting you. She looked down. I waited a moment, in case she had anything more to say. But she didn't, and I didn't need her to. I drove away without music, just the sound of the tires humming on the road. I passed familiar streets, coffee shops we used to go to, the gas station where we once got into a dumb fight about windshield wiper fluid. None of it made me sad, because the version of me she'd torn apart, the one who sat quietly at parties, who accepted humiliation like it was a form of love, he didn't survive this story. But I did. I moved into a small apartment near the edge of town. It's not fancy, but it's mine. I bought a new coffee maker, a bookshelf, and a bicycle I keep telling myself I'll ride on weekends. I sleep better now. I wake up with a strange sense of freedom, not excitement, not adrenaline, but a quiet stillness that feels like peace. Last week, I reconnected with an old friend from college. Her name's Daphne. We met for coffee. No expectations, no pressure. Just two people, laughing about how much older we've gotten and how little we care about the things we once thought mattered. I told her the short version of what happened. She didn't ask for the long one. She just looked me in the eyes and said, "You didn't deserve that." I nodded. "I know." She smiled. "You're not invisible, Lyle. Not even close." And for the first time in years, I believed it.